Let's discuss about the basic assumptions here. The first one is rational consumer. We have already discussed this topic before, that rational consumers are playing a very important role when it comes to economics as an assumption. It requires that consumer try to behave very rationally. They should make a sound decision at all the time. The law assumes that consumer try to maximize the utility subject to their income. An example of a rational consumer would be a person choosing between two cars. So let's say car B is cheaper than car A, so the consumer purchases car B. While a rational choice theory is logical and easy to understand, it is often contradicted in the real world. Let's assume a different example. Let us assume here that there are two people who want to buy t-shirts. We can divide the preferences of these two people based on the prices of the t-shirt. While one consumer may go for a cheaper price product because it would fit to their budget, another may go for a high-end pricey goods because they want a good quality and a durability for that product. In this example, both persons are making rational decisions. However, their rationalities are very different. While one consumer is making a choice depending on the prices, the other one is looking for the quality and durability of a product in return of a higher price of a product. The second one is measurement of utility. The utility of a commodity can be measured using quantifiable standards like cup of tea, a bag of sugar, pair of socks, etc. That means it can be quantified and it can have a unit to it. The third one goes constant marginal utility of money. Constant marginal utility of money means that utility per unit of money remains unchanged for a consumer. This implies that each additional unit of money provides a consumer with the same level of satisfaction. This leads to the use of money as a measuring rod in utility services. The next assumption is homogeneity of goods. What is homogeneous goods? Well, a homogeneous product may imply that products are identical in quality, shape, size and color. So, no producer is in a position to charge a different price of a product it produces. A uniform price prevails in the market. In a perfectly competitive market, the commodity is more or less identical or homogeneous in nature. The next assumption is continuity. This assumption is fundamental for the law to hold. It means that a consumer continuously consumes every additional unit of goods. Therefore, there should be no interval between the consumption of other units. Let me explain you with an example here. For example, if a hungry person eats a pizza for lunch and then eats more pizza for dinner, the law is violated because the consumer is again hungry and derives increased utility from the second pizza than he would if he eats it right away after lunch. So, intervals between consumption of additional unit violates the law. It should be in a continuous pattern or continuous form. The next assumption is ceteris paribus. That means all external factors acting on a variable subject are assumed to remain unchanged, constant while testing its relationship with other variable subjects. Economists use it for confirmation of the theory in economics. So, whenever next time you get a word ceteris paribus, it means every other things remaining same or other factors remaining the same. There are different approaches to measure utility. Since we know what is utility and we know what are its significance, it is very important for us to know how to measure utility. The cardinal utility approach was founded by Alfred Marshall. He was one of the most influential economists of his time. Alfred Marshall is regarded as a father of neoclassical economics. He contributed to the introduction of demand-supply concept as well. As of now, we'll discuss about Alfred Marshall cardinal utility approach. The cardinal utility approach is propounded by neoclassical economists who believed that utility is measurable and the consumer may express his or her satisfaction in cardinal or in quantitative number such as 1, 2, 3 and so on. They introduced a hypothetical unit called as utils. Now, if I take you back, you would remember I told you that in the coming slides we'll be talking about utils, and here we'll discuss about it. So, basically it is a hypothetical unit that has been introduced and it means to measure utility. Here 1 utils is equivalent to 1 rupee and utility of money remains constant. Over a passage of time, it was realized that the absolute measure of utility is not possible. That is, it was difficult to measure the feeling of satisfaction in numbers, that is cardinally. Also, it was difficult to quantify the factors that cause a change in the mood of the consumer, their taste, their preferences and their likes and dislikes. Therefore, the utility is not measurable in quantitative terms, but however, it is being used as a starting point in the consumer behavior analysis. The consumption theory is based on the notion that consumer aims to maximize the utility and thus all his actions are directed towards utility maximization. The consumption theory seeks to find out the answer to the following question as to how does a consumer decides on the optimum quantity of a commodity that he or she wishes to consume. How consumers allocate their disposable income between several commodities of consumption such that utility is maximized, or the cardinal utility approach used in analyzing the consumer behavior depending on the following assumption to find out the answer to the above stated question. Some of the assumptions would be related to rationality, limited resources, maximizing satisfaction. When we are talking about rationality, it is assumed that consumers are rational, that we have already discussed. When it comes to limited resources, that means the consumer had limited money to spend on the purchase of goods and services, and thus this makes the consumer buy those commodities first which is necessity to them. Maximize satisfaction means every consumer try to aims at maximizing his her satisfaction for the amount of money he or she spend on goods and services. Cardinal approach believed that not only the utility is measurable, but also the utility derived from the consumption of different commodities are added up to realize the total utility. Thus, the cardinal utility approach is used as a basis for explaining the consumer behavior when every individual aims at maximizing his or her utility or satisfaction for the amount of money he spent on the consumption of goods and service. The basic idea behind ordinal utility approach is, now from here we are going to see what is ordinal utility approach. We have covered the cardinal utility approach, its merit, demerit, criticism and so on. Now we are going to see what is ordinal utility approach and how does it differ from it. So, the basic idea behind ordinal utility approach is that a consumer keeps number of pairs of two commodity in his mind which give him equal level of satisfaction. Now, this means that utility can be ranked qualitatively. The ordinal utility approach differs from the cardinal utility approach, also can be referred as a classical theory, in the sense that the satisfaction derived from the various commodities cannot be measured objectively. The ordinal utility approach is based on the fact that utility of a commodity cannot be measured in absolute quantity. But however, it will be possible for a consumer to tell subjectively whether the commodity derives more or less or equal number of satisfaction than this. The modern economists have discarded the concept of cardinal utility and instead applied the ordinal utility approach to study the behavior of consumer. While the neoclassical economists believe that the utility can be expressed in terms of number, quantifying it, etc., whereas the modern economists maintain that the utility, being the psychological phenomenon, cannot be measured theoretically but qualitatively can be done. The modern economics, Hicks in a particular form, have applied the ordinal utility concept to study the consumer behavior. He introduced a tool of analysis called as indifference curve to analyze the consumer behavior. Hence, the indifference curve refers to the locus of points each showing different combination of two substitute which yield a same level of satisfaction and utility to a consumer. Now, let me suppose give you an example of ordinal utility approach. Since I said that it is very difficult to measure everything and quantifying it, and that's true. So, let's say how to measure this particular scenario with ordinal utility approach. So, we can always rank it or we can use the relative term. So, suppose I say I like vanilla flavored ice cream than chocolate. So, I am using the word than here. Or I can use greater than, less than. These are the relative terms what I am using in order to differentiate between two products. Let's say a ranking mechanism can also be used. Suppose in a class of students, I can rank them that first, second, third, fourth in terms of height, in terms of numbers, what they achieve, etc. So, in that way, the ranking methods can also be used in ordinal utility approach rather than quantifying it always. So, here in these scenarios we are comparing subjectively rather than quantifying it in terms of utils. And hence Hicks have come up with, or he has introduced a tool to analyze it by ordinal utility approach, which was called as indifference curve, and this curve is used to analyze the consumer behavior. Hence, the indifference curve refers to the locus of the point, each showing different combination of two substitute which can yield the same level of, satisfaction to a consumer. Hence, ordinal utility depicts a consumer satisfaction level by viewing his preferences of one product over another. The ordinal utility explains that it is meaningless to ask how much better one good is as compared to another. Therefore, all these studies of consumer decision making are expressed in terms of ordinal utility. Indifference curve we will start in the next slide. Thank you.